People who work in human resources. What is the weirdest shit you have seen? Worked in HR for a couple years now, mostly for large firms managing facilities within properties. One of the strangest cases was brought about because a client asked us to review CCTV footage as he'd driven past the office late at night and noticed the motion sensor lights inside going on and off, and was concerned there had been a break-in. Turned out, our night security officer, whose primary role is to monitor cameras from the control room, was skipping up and down the corridors because he felt too full of energy and had to get it out of his system somehow. Watching the footage of him skipping, featuring the occasional star jump through vacant corridors for 20 minutes at 1 a.m., really made my day. Got a call from our office in India that staff who supported the night shift were running a brothel. From the office, they didn't know they could do that. Still fired. They tried to appeal the decision. Did not work. Worked for a large trucking company. Every employee would get a present on their birthday, in the mail, and their names on the video board. This week's birthdays are: a guy called to ask if his name could not be on the board. Reason: his twin brother murdered his parents, and he did not want to be reminded of his birthday. I no longer work in HR or at this company, but it's my favorite story from my time there. Our benefits team made the decision to eliminate reserved parking, as lots of employees were frustrated when they walked past dozens of empty spots in their reserve lots every day. This new policy applied to all of the company's locations. Of course, the benefits managers received hundreds of complaints in the first few days from people insisting they needed an exception for their own personal spot. The best reason by far was from one person who needed a spot close to the door because they were terrified of bobcats. No other context. We didn't have bobcats near the corporate office, so at first we thought they meant construction equipment. Turns out there actually were sightings of bobcats, like the animal, near this person's location. Last I heard, they were told to arrive earlier to get a closer spot and didn't get an exception. People are freaking crazy about their parking spot. Out of an office that has a parking lot for just about 100 vehicles, we have an early Saturday shift that consists of myself and 4 other guys. One guy comes into the office pissed off, grabs the keys to a company pickup, and moves it across the parking lot. I asked what his problem was. He says, "I'm sick of these assholes parking in my spot." Our parking lot is not reserved in any way, and there were 90 plus parking spots at this point in time. But he went through all the effort to park his vehicle, come into the building, get the key for the company pickup, move the pickup, and move his vehicle to his parking spot. I was speechless. One of the dumbest things, an employee that worked night audit at a hotel parked his car at the entrance and would occasionally go out there to drink a bottle of vodka in full view of the cameras. He didn't even sit in his car to drink, just grabbed the bottle out of the car each time and drank in the open. Seriously, he could have put it in a water bottle and drank it at the desk and would not have been caught as soon as he was, if at all. We had an employee do this during his lunch break, but more discreetly. Then he would fill his McDonald's cup and drink it all afternoon. After 6 weeks or so, he was fired after being reported for smelling like booze at work. 4 days later, his obituary was in the paper. He was in his 50s. I can't help but feel like this pushed him over the edge, and I think about him from time to time. My dad works in HR. He told me about a day when they had to lay off about half of the company. It was crazy, and there were a whole lot of moving parts that day. Unfortunately, in all the craziness, no one remembered to tell this one new hire that sadly the position he was hired for was no longer affordable. So he came in the office only to see everyone clearing out their desks and leaving. And then he got laid off an hour into his first day. He said the guy understood, but it was the most horrible he ever felt for someone in his life. Obscuring a few details here, you'll understand why in a second. There was a mid-level supervisor at a state agency I never got along with. Guy was nasty, argumentative, real piece of work, but still had a decent amount of people loyal to him. I come in one day and he's not there. Everyone was distraught. Turns out law enforcement had come after the guy. Caught him red-handed for trafficking child pornography. Rather than arrest him immediately, they gave him the option to return home, settle his affairs, maybe call his lawyer. He took the opportunity to simply hang himself in his own garage instead. The next couple of weeks was just damage control among the staff when the details came out. Horrible situation all around. There was a very similar incident at the first company I worked at. Before I started working there, they had an ex-con IT guy who was said to be a little creepy. Apparently the feds came by while he was out and were looking for him. Apparently, when he was told about it, he said he wouldn't go back to prison and left and went home and shot himself. It was suspected he was involved in CP, hence the feds. Call center employee calls HR to complain about their supervisor. He's abusive. He won't even let me leave my desk. Supervisor calls HR to complain about employee. Can you please tell so-and-so that she's allowed to leave her desk? Oh my god, she's shitting in her trash can. It may sound humorous, but there was significant mental issues at the heart of this. I had to see a video of a guy who shit himself during work while running to the restroom because his manager wouldn't let him leave a meeting early. The guy had IBD and the manager knew this, so the video shows him running down the hall and literally a few feet from the restroom, he starts shitting himself and you see it coming down his leg pant. He looked to be in pain because he kinda collapsed and then got back up. People were baffled when they saw this live lol. Manager equaled fired. So definitely the weirdest shit I've ever seen. Literally. I once had a temp job in HR. I was scanning lots of old personal files, and the one perk of the job was reading old complaints against people. The best one I came across was a mediation, caused by one member of staff accusing another of witchcraft. I got a call from a woman I'd never spoken to, asking when she could start. She'd received a job offer after interviewing with a manager for a customer service position, she told me, but no one ever contacted her about a start date or pre-employment processes like a background check, and it had been a month. After a lengthy investigation, it came out that this manager had fabricated a job opening and offered it to this woman in an attempt to impress her. She quit her job, but it should be noted, did not respond to the manager's romantic overtures. With the expectation of joining my company, she got a settlement with an NDA, and the guy who hired her got fired. There was also a guy who faked his son's death for some extra PTO. I used to work at a staffing agency that placed people at manufacturing positions. Everyone had to be drug tested at the office as part of the orientation. If the P cup came back as inconclusive, we'd send the potential hire to a medical lab. They would take another drug test, and the lab could determine if the person was on a prescription or using illegal drugs, and therefore not eligible for hire. So one guy failed his test at the lab. He came back to the office, claiming it wasn't his fault. He explained that he was riding in a car and he stuck his head out of the window. Then, when the car passed under a bridge, someone threw a bunch of cocaine off the bridge. It hit him in the face, and he accidentally inhaled it. I was a recruiter, and you would be shocked to see what some people actually have as their personal email. Most people have come around to using just their name, but then every once in a while, you'll have to verify that brownglitter69 is in fact how they would like to be contacted. An IT guy who worked the overnight shift, because he was doing support for our Asia/Europe regions, got written up for improper use of company systems. He had dozens, if not hundreds of Google image searches related to foot fetish stuff, like insert celebrity here feet, along with other random stuff like cute toes, etc. Like, dude, you're in IT. You know this stuff is tracked and that your boss could easily monitor it. One of my relatives worked in tech support for a really high profile company in Silicon Valley during the height of the dot-com boom. Some guy who desperately wanted to work there was emailing his resume to HR 1,000 times every day, several times a day. The number of emails would get too overwhelming, so the people in HR would just select all the emails in the inbox and delete all of them, whether the emails were from the applicant or not. My relative had to show them how to filter emails from the applicant. Guy came into the interview in sweatpants and a hoodie and said he didn't need the job because of how much money he was making illegally, but he wanted to have a job so the IRS didn't get suspicious. Weirdest part is, I don't live in America. I very much doubt the IRS cares about Canadian tax returns. One of the candidates I was interviewing via Skype, one answered the phone while in his boxers and a tank top, then stood up to grab his blazer that was probably about 3 feet away. I had to see him in his stretched out boxers. 2 had a porn site up and open during a shared screen trial to see how well he can use the digital classroom. I had to remind him I can see his screen. He goes, "Oh yeah, sorry." Next, instead of closing it from the corner of his partially hidden window, he clicks open the window in full view, then closes it. That was nice. Not weird as much as kind of funny and inappropriate. Was working in HR at a call center in the early 2000s. Got a visit from the IT guy one day, letting me know that a guy in quality control had been visiting porn sites on his work computer. They gave me the report and I set up a meeting with him. "So John, you've been visiting adult websites on the job. Well, you know how we do a lot of research and sometimes you just accidentally land one? It happens. John, you visited one particular site 27 times. Should I grab my things?" "Yup." The new receptionist was coming in every month and opening up programs/documents to make it look like they were busy. And they'd sit with one hand on their mouse and one hand on their keyboard and stare blankly at their screen for 8 hours a day and not do anything. They'd also consistently pick up the phone and hang it up without saying anything so that it would stop ringing. I sat in on their termination and the employee started screaming at the manager about how they were doing an amazing job and they had to give him another chance. I was 100% confident that they were just trying to make some easy money, and it wouldn't surprise me that they were finally getting fired. The whole thing was just bizarre. Not exactly weird, but I work in HR and we have 2 people with the exact same name, but in different departments. This still causes confusion sometimes, but the most awkward was last year at the Christmas party. We have this annual Employee of the Year award, and the name was announced before mentioning the department or other info, although I warned the MC not to do that, as we had 2 people with the same name. Let's just say the wrong one got the most excited until he realized it wasn't him. I worked closely with HR in a call center. You'd get some crazy stuff. Guy that carried a cooler every day was wiping shit on random walls and desks. It was his shit in his cooler. We thought it was his lunch. He got caught when he wiped it on the front desk directly in sight of the camera. Another guy had a colostomy bag that he refused to empty when it got full. You would find these trails of liquid poo randomly, and we had to throw out 4 chairs that he ruined. He was fired quickly and tried to claim discrimination because he was a veteran. You'd also get a crazy amount of period stains on chairs. Look, it happens, but when it's the same few people and we have free sanitary supplies in the bathrooms, you know they just don't care. This reminded me of a contractor on a project I also worked. A friend of mine worked in HR. She told me someone was urinating in their cube. They had moved this contractor a few times because his cube would start to smell of urine. Guy claimed he had no idea what was causing it. Company would move him, have area professionally cleaned, and process would start again. After the 3rd move, they put up cameras. Turns out, contractor would take a coffee cup to the bathroom, urinate in it, and then return to the cube and pour it on the floor. He was fired and escorted out with his cup. I work HR for a call center. The entire company has over 500 employees. Maybe 250 of them are in the call center. Entry-level work. Tiny bit more than minimum wage. A girl started her first week, doing really well, and then week 2 got really weird. She walked into the CEO's office on another floor in the building while he was meeting with someone to demand that he buy her a dog because she thought having a companion would improve her work performance. That was entirely rational. I knew many people like this in college. I ran into pretty weird circles, so I met a lot of real characters. Usually, they had undiagnosed or untreated mental health issues and were very sheltered by their parents. No sense of normal social boundaries, and a heaping dose of entitlement. This is the kind of stuff they would do at jobs in school. No idea how they are surviving in the real world. Likely still living with their parents and hopping from one call center to the next. Many never finish their degrees. Kinda sad, really. I also know people who get help and are now living happy, stable lives. I work in my family's business, in the industrial sector, and HR is one of the hats I wear. 2018 was insanely busy for us, so we had to hire a staffing agency to get some general labor guys in. It's a simple wax on, wax off kind of job. The most memorable part of that hectic summer was one temp that the agency sent over for third shift, midnight through 8 a.m. We will call him Bobby for this story. Bobby shows up wearing nothing but a pair of cargo shorts, so we had to provide him pants, shirt, and steel toes. Come break time at 4, he decided to go out to the parking lot and scale the building about 30 feet, probably climbed a tree or something, had a smoke, and managed to turn the security camera away from the parking lot. Bobby then walked away from the job and went home in the uniform and boots we provided him. We assumed he wanted to break into some of the cars, but nothing was gone. Ended up costing probably $300 for training, uniform, and just wasting our time. This was in the early 2000s, when people still sent paper applications. I worked for a gaming company, so we got a fair amount of unsolicited applications, usually young people trying to break into the industry. But this application was extra special. It started with, "I am in the center of an international conspiracy," followed by 2 tightly printed A4 pages of the freakiest shit imaginable. Researcher onto something, hunted by dark forces, agent of other unseen forces he fell out of favor with, and a few weird political tangents. Wanted a job with us because he needed to lay low for a while before he could get out of the country. We were suitably freaked out by the mere fact that he had our office address, chose to not reply, and forwarded the whole thing to corporate HR. I had 2 employees at the manufacturing site that I support that didn't get along. Nothing much ever came out of it until one of the employees put in his 2-week notice. On this second to last day of employment, he brought a garbage bag full of dog shit with him to work and dumped it on his coworker's car. I'm not sure where he got it from. He either collected it from his dogs for months, or he went to a dog park and just picked all of it up. The amount of dog shit covered the car from front bumper to the rear window. The only part that wasn't covered was the trunk. Had to counsel an employee who went on a walk and witnessed a decapitation during a domestic dispute happening in our parking lot. Had to fire somebody for making drugs and porn videos in an RV in the parking lot. I had to sit with an employee who was so drunk she couldn't sit up straight in her chair and kept reaching over for her bottle of orange juice with mostly vodka. Waited 3 hours for her husband to show up. When he did, he was drunk too. I had to refuse to let her go and then followed him and dropped her off at home. I had someone interviewing for a job. He asked bluntly the name of our president. We told him and he straight up said, "I can get hired right now and do a much better job than said president. It will be a fool for you all not to hire me." He was applying for an entry-level customer service assistant job. Oh, and he also cussed up a storm during the interview. I worked HR and IT at a startup for a few years. Being the only tech-savvy guy on the HR team, I managed our HRIS, Human Resources Information System, which had all of the employee information in it, and I would get notifications emailed to me for important to-do items like on and off-board employees, setting up accounts, things like that. A few months ago, there was a big layoff and about 10% of the company was being let go. Automated emails started pouring in to start removing access for people, and then I got an email that I needed to remove my own access. I found out I was being let go by an automated email telling me that I needed to remove my own access. My wife works in HR. She had to question a high-ranking employee about an incident where a lower-ranking employee who was being talked to about her inappropriate wardrobe choices, which clearly violated company policy, decided in an act of protest to take out her quite large left breast and smack it down on the table and asked him, in her thick New England accent, "Is this too much cleavage for you?" A guy who was so high at the time of his interview that he forgot who he was meeting and why. Our applications say we do not hire violent felons. The guy checked that he was a felon. When I asked him about it, he said it was for domestic violence and stalking. I asked him if he read the part about us not hiring violent felons, and he just couldn't connect the dots. It's got violence in the name of the charge, dude. Literally had a guy complain, "How come we only have overtime when you want it?" You, meaning the company. That's just how jobs work, man. In casual conversation, a guy told me the hilarious story about how his girlfriend got an IUD without his permission, so he ripped it out by the strings. Had a mom show up on behalf of her son for the interview. While firing someone and listing off the reasons they were being terminated, the person goes, "Yeah, I mean, I did that, but you don't have to fire me, yo. I didn't violate a procedure, and it doesn't say no sex in our code of conduct." Exact quote. What was he being fired for? Having sex with the building security guard in the parking lot of our building, and it was all recorded on surveillance. We had a woman who was terrible at her job, always off sick, never met a deadline. Anyway, protocol was followed because some people had given her half-decent staff reviews to get rid of her. She called in the union to support her. This dragged the process. Then, when she got the final papers, she sent them back saying she couldn't be fired. She was pregnant. This woman was 54. It turned out she had frozen eggs, so she defrosted them. The process proving no discrimination then began. 6 months go by. She gets served again. We worked at an organization, big building in Manhattan, hence terrible bureaucracy. Papers come back. That isn't me. You've sent the documents to. Turns out, she had provided a false passport when hired. She was actually in her 60s. In the end, they gave her early retirement to get it over with. Someone recently applied for an open job we have, and the email address she used to contact us had the display name Petty Barbie with them curves. A friend of mine was hiring. A gal walks into the interview with a bug that she found outside. My friend said during the entire interview, she was watching it crawl around on her hands. She would talk to the bug when she answered his questions, never once making eye contact with him. Someone was asked to file the freshly negotiated contracts. In context, this meant to lodge them with the relevant government authority to be processed. Someone proceeded to put them in his filing cabinets because he was asked to file contracts. It was me, 15 years ago. I'm someone. I worked with a guy for a couple of years. Talked to him every day, and we got along pretty well. He was a smart, well-spoken guy, and even had a PhD in psychology, specifically child psychology. He had a wife and 2 daughters, brought Girl Scout cookies to the office to sell, shared pictures from his family vacations, talked about his movies and music, the normal stuff. One day, he doesn't come to work. Our HR director gets everyone together to let us know that our coworker has been arrested by the FBI and declines to go into detail. That evening, on the local news, his picture pops up. He was arrested for possession and dissemination of child porn. I had an employee who used a porta-john and was attacked by wasps and claimed disability because he couldn't wear pants due to swelling. I saw the pics and didn't dare challenge his claim. Poor guy. My boss tried to frame me by planting drugs in my desk drawer and then calling the cops. Luckily, it was a Capri salad instead, so it ended up okay.